Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the UEES Horizon, staring at the massive alien ship that had appeared at the edge of their sensors. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. An enormous vessel that seemed to shimmer in space, its shape shifting slightly as if it was made of liquid metal. The crew moved swiftly around him, their eyes glued to their stations, but no one spoke. There was a quiet tension in the air, thick enough to be felt. "Any response to our greeting message?" Captain Miller asked, his voice steady, even though his heart was pounding in his chest. He didn't want to admit it, but this was the moment humanity had prepared for. This was the first contact. Lisa Dawson, the ship's intelligence officer, was at her terminal, eyes narrowed in concentration. "Nothing yet, Captain," she said, her voice betraying a hint of unease. "They're scanning us, though. Hard. It's like they're trying to figure us out." The Horizon was humanity's pride. A ship designed for exploration beyond the solar system. It was the most advanced vessel in their fleet. No one had expected to find intelligent life so soon, especially not a species that seemed so alien. But here it was, and with it came the heavy realization that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. "Wait," Lisa said suddenly, her voice rising slightly with surprise. "I'm getting something. They're responding." Her fingers danced across her console, and the main screen flickered to life, showing a figure. It was an alien, its skin a pale gray blue, its face too unfamiliar for any of them to make sense of. 4 eyes sat in a diamond-shaped formation, and what appeared to be armored plates ran across its skull. The alien spoke, its voice deep and resonant, the words translated by the ship's computer. "I am Supreme Commander Zex Tall of the Vorsary Dominion," the alien said, his tone carrying a weight that seemed to fill the room. "You have entered space claimed by our empire." Captain Miller's brow furrowed. "I am Captain John Miller of the United Earthship Horizon. We come in peace as explorers. We did not know this region was claimed." The alien's upper eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment there was a tense silence. "Ignorance is no excuse for trespassing," Zextal replied. "However, we are curious about your species. We have not encountered your kind before." The alien's words sent a chill down the crew's spines. They had hoped for peace, but something about this conversation felt off. Zextal's interest seemed too focused, too intense, especially when it came to their weapons. Within hours, a formal meeting was arranged. The Vorsari delegation requested to board the Horizon, and John had agreed. He hoped that this encounter, despite the tension, would go smoothly. The Horizon was humanity's first step into the stars, and he couldn't afford to let fear dictate their actions. He assembled a team of senior officers, including Lisa, and prepared to meet the aliens face to face. When the Vorsari delegation arrived, they looked nothing like humans. Towering figures, they were clad in shimmering metallic armor that seemed to move like liquid with every step. Supreme Commander Zex Tall was the tallest of them all, standing a full head above the others. His presence was commanding, and the crew could feel the weight of his gaze as he surveyed the room. "Welcome aboard the Horizon," John said, giving a polite bow, trying to ease the tension that hung in the air. But Zextal did not return the gesture. Instead, he stared at the ship. his eyes scanning every detail, his voice low as he spoke. "Your vessel is smaller than I expected," he said, his tone almost dismissive. The crew followed the Vorsari to the conference room, the towering aliens inspecting every inch of the ship as they passed. Their hands stayed near what John assumed were weapons, though they never drew them. It made him uneasy, but he held his composure. He had to make a good impression. As they took their seats, the conversation turned to the topic of war. Zex Tall's voice, though calm, had a sharp edge as he asked, "Tell me, does your species engage in warfare?" John hesitated for a moment. "We have had wars in our past, but Earth is united now. We seek peaceful exploration and trade." Zex Tall's eyes seemed to flicker with something like amusement. "Interesting," he said, his voice carrying a subtle challenge. "And yet, you arm your vessels for defense only?" John nodded. "Space is unknown and potentially dangerous. We've had to prepare ourselves for what we might encounter." "How wise," Zex Tall mused, his gaze lingering on the weapons on display in the room. "Though your weapons seem primitive." The conversation shifted again as the Vorsari asked more about Earth, its population, resources, and military capabilities. But they shared little about themselves in return. It was clear that the Vorsari were calculating, gathering information about humanity's strengths and weaknesses without offering much in return. After the meeting, as the Vorsari toured the ship, Lisa pulled John aside. "Captain, something doesn't feel right," she whispered. "They're too interested in our defenses. I've noticed their communications are active. They're mapping our ship." John frowned. "Keep watching them," he said quietly, "but we can't accuse them without proof." The tour ended, and the Vorsari delegation returned to their shuttle without saying much more. As they left, the crew of the Horizon was left in a heavy silence. The officers gathered around Captain Miller, each of them exchanging wary glances. The weight of the encounter lingered in the air, thick and oppressive. Lisa, still uneasy, approached John with her findings. "Captain," she began, her voice low and tense. "I analyzed their communications as much as I could. They were transmitting detailed scans of our weapons and our ship's defenses. And there's something else. I believe they're preparing for aggression." She paused, looking around at the others. "They referred to us as potential subjects. Several times." John took a deep breath, his mind racing. His worst fear was beginning to take shape. The Vorsari were not the peaceful explorers they had hoped for. They weren't interested in alliance or trade. No, they were assessing humanity, preparing to strike. The idea of conquest had started to seep into their words, and the threat of war felt more real with each passing moment. He turned toward the crew. "Send a priority message to Earth. We need to prepare. I don't think we've made friends today." The Horizon's engines roared to life, and the ship began its journey back toward Earth, leaving the Vorsari ship behind. As the distance between the two vessels grew, John's thoughts were clouded with the same sinking feeling. They hadn't made an alliance today. They had made enemies. Back on Earth, the atmosphere was tense as the news of the first contact reached the leaders of the United Earth government. Captain Miller's warning was taken seriously, and within hours, military and defense protocols began to shift. It was clear to Earth's top officials that humanity had underestimated the scope of what they were facing. Admiral Paul Bennett, commander of the United Earth Defense Forces, gathered his staff for an emergency meeting. He pored over the data transmitted from the horizon, studying the first encounters with the Vorsari. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "They're a militaristic race, and they've been surveying us for weaknesses. They are not the explorers we hoped for. If they return with the same aggression we saw on the horizon, we need to be ready." "Understood, Admiral," one of the officers replied. "We'll begin strengthening the defenses around Earth and its colonies. We can't afford to take any chances." Dr. Susan Wright, a leading scientist working on shield technology at the Mars colony, had already been notified of the potential threat. She had been developing new defense systems that might be able to stand up against the alien ship's energy weapons. She worked day and night, knowing how important her research had become. "Just a little longer," she muttered to herself as she adjusted the latest test. "We're so close. If this works, we might have a chance." Her assistant, Dr. Alan Foster, nodded beside her. "It'll work. We just need time." But the warning came too soon. Without the time they needed, the alarms blared throughout the Mars research colony. The sensors, positioned at Neptune's orbit, had detected 5 large ships approaching at high speed. They matched the design of the Vorsari ship Captain Miller had encountered. Earth sent messages in every possible frequency, hoping for a peaceful response. But the ships did not answer, continuing on their path toward the inner planets. The atmosphere on Earth was electric with fear and anticipation. Admiral Bennett's orders were swift. "All forces, prepare for immediate action. Keep tight communication. Hold positions for now, but stay ready." Lisa Dawson, promoted after the Horizon encounter, was stationed at Earth's command center, analyzing the incoming fleet's movements. "Sir, they're changing course. They're heading directly toward Mars." The massive ships, each one large enough to dwarf Earth's military vessels, moved with incredible speed, crossing the vastness of space in mere hours. Earth's forces scrambled to intercept them, but by the time the defense fleet reached Mars, the Vorsari ships had already reached the red planet. 4 of the ships positioned themselves at a safe distance, their weapons powered and ready. One of the ships descended into Mars orbit, heading straight for the Mars research colony. "They're targeting the research colony," Lisa said, her voice tight with worry. For long, buildings began to crumble, and the colony's infrastructure began to collapse under the intense firepower. Panic spread as civilians fled to shelters, but many didn't make it in time. The loss of life was catastrophic, and among the dead was Dr. Susan Wright, who had been working on the new shield technology. She never had a chance to complete her work. Captain Miller and the crew of the Horizon were among the first to arrive in Mars's orbit, joining the defense battle. As soon as his ship came into range, Captain Miller gave his orders. "Target their weapon systems," he commanded. "We'll make them rethink their strategy. Stay in formation. Focus on taking out their main cannons." The Earth ships attacked in coordinated waves, using a strategy that the Vorsari hadn't encountered before. The Earth fleet moved in tight formations, striking from multiple angles. The Vorsari, stunned by the swift and unexpected maneuvering, struggled to track all 6 Earth ships. But then, Lieutenant Sam Jones, Miller's tactical officer, saw an opportunity. "Captain, their rear shields weaken when they fire their main weapons. There's a power fluctuation. If we hit that spot, we can break through," Jones said, his voice tense with excitement. Miller nodded, understanding the tactical advantage. All ships concentrate fire on their rear shields. Hit them when they discharge their main cannon. The next time the Vorsari fired, all 6 Earth ships unleashed their firepower at the exact spot where the alien ship's defenses were weakest. The impact was immediate. The alien ship shuddered as its shields faltered, and critical systems began to fail. To everyone's surprise, the Vorsari ship pulled back, retreating to higher orbit. The remaining Vorsari ships, recognizing the loss of their superior vessel, retreated as well, pulling out of Mars' orbit and speeding away from the solar system. Earth's forces were left in stunned silence, unsure of what had just happened. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Back on Earth, Admiral Bennett received the news with grim determination. "They've retreated for now," he said, standing before the council members. "But this was just a test. We've learned that they're not invincible, and now we know that we have a chance." As Earth began its recovery and regrouping, the war that had seemed distant was now at their doorstep. With their defenses tested and their resolve hardened, humanity had passed its first test. But the Vorsari would return, and this time they would come with even greater force. The weeks following the first attack were a whirlwind of activity on Earth. Military forces worked around the clock, fortifying the planet's defenses, repairing damaged infrastructure, and preparing for the inevitable return of the Vorsari. The morale of the Earth forces was high after their unexpected victory at Mars, but everyone knew that this was just the beginning. The Vorsari had tested them, and now they would be back, stronger and more determined than ever. Admiral Bennett knew that Earth had been lucky, but luck wasn't something they could count on in the long run. The Vorsari had underestimated humanity's capacity for resistance, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. He spent hours in the command center, studying the tactics Earth had used in the first battle, trying to anticipate how the alien fleet would adapt in their next attack. Meanwhile, on Mars, Dr. Alan Foster had become a key figure in the development of the new shield technology. After the loss of Dr. Susan Wright, Foster had taken over her work, pushing forward with the development of the energy dispersion shields that might protect Earth from future attacks. His team worked tirelessly, with long hours and little rest. Every test brought them closer to their goal, but the pressure was immense. "We're almost there," Foster said one night, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "If we can stabilize the energy matrix just a little more, these shields will hold against the worst the Vorsari can throw at us." His assistant, Dr. Melanie Harris, glanced up from the console, her face drawn with concern. "Just a little more, Alan? We've been saying that for weeks now. What happens if it doesn't hold under real combat conditions?" Foster sighed, rubbing his temples. "We don't have the luxury of if anymore. We need this to work, Melanie. Earth needs this." At that very moment, Earth's long-range sensors detected something that sent chills through everyone working in the command centers. The Vorsari fleet was coming. But this time, it wasn't just 5 ships. The new fleet was massive, at least 20 warships, all heading straight for Earth. "They're coming for the kill," Admiral Bennett said grimly. His face darkened with the weight of the situation. He turned to Lisa Dawson, now stationed at Earth's command center. "Any sign of them trying to negotiate, like last time?" Lisa shook her head, her eyes narrowing as she studied the incoming fleet on the display. Nothing. They're heading straight for us. No communication. They want to overwhelm us with force. The Council of Earth's leaders convened again, the atmosphere heavy with tension. President Maria Garcia stood before them, her face set in determination. The Vorsari are coming in full force. We have no time to waste. We'll need to deploy every defense we have, and I mean every resource. If we're going to survive this, we need to be ready for anything. Admiral Bennett, what's our strategy? One of the leaders asked, his voice thick with worry. Bennett stood, his posture strong, but his mind racing. We know how the Vorsari fight. They rely on overwhelming firepower and rigid formations, but they're predictable. They don't adapt quickly, and that's where we have the advantage. We'll use what we learned from the Mars battle. We'll coordinate with our ships, hit them from multiple angles, and keep them guessing. We'll turn their strength against them. But even as the plan was formed, Earth's military leaders knew that this battle would be different. The Vorsari's new fleet was enormous, and their weapons were more advanced. The technology that had worked before might not be enough this time. The stakes were higher than ever, and the fear of failure hung heavy in the air. Back on Earth, civilians were told to prepare for the worst. Evacuation orders were issued for all major cities, and people were rushed into underground shelters. As the day of the battle neared, there was a sense of dread in the air, but there was also something else: determination. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and they had fought back. Now, they would do so again. Meanwhile, on the horizon, Captain Miller and his crew were preparing for their role in the coming battle. The ship had been retrofitted with the latest technology, including the newly developed energy shields based on Dr. Wright's research. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best humanity had, and it would have to be enough. "We're ready, Captain," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice steady as he checked the ship's systems. "We've got the new pulse weapons online, and the shields are holding at maximum capacity. We're as ready as we can be." Miller nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He wasn't sure if readiness was enough. The Vorsari had the firepower to wipe them out in an instant. What they lacked, however, was the unpredictability that had made humanity's tactics so effective. As the crew prepared for battle, Miller couldn't shake the feeling that this time they wouldn't have the luxury of surprise. "Let's hope it's enough," Miller muttered under his breath. Hours later, the skies above Earth were filled with the dark shapes of the Vorsari fleet. 20 ships, massive, foreboding, and ominously silent, emerged from faster-than-light travel and positioned themselves at the edge of Earth's orbit. Their weapons powered up, sending ripples of energy through space, and the air around Earth seemed to crackle with tension. Admiral Bennett's voice echoed through the command centers. "All forces, get into position. Prepare for battle. We can't afford to hesitate." Earth's defense fleet was ready. They had drilled and prepared for this moment, but the vast number of enemy ships was overwhelming. Still, Earth's forces had one thing the Vorsari did not: unity. Ships from every corner of Earth's colonies, and even some from allied species, had gathered to defend the home planet. It wasn't enough to guarantee victory, but it was a fighting chance. As the Vorsari fleet advanced, Captain Miller's voice crackled over the intercom. "All ships, maintain your formations. Stay coordinated and wait for the signal. We're not giving up without a fight." But just as the battle was about to begin, something unexpected happened. A small, unfamiliar ship appeared from beyond the edge of the fleet, broadcasting a signal in English. It was no Vorsari ship. This one was different, elegant, sleek, and clearly not of the same design as the Vorsari warships. The Earth Defense Fleet sensors quickly confirmed that the ship was coming toward them, and it was not in any kind of attack formation. "This can't be a coincidence," Lisa Dawson said, her voice filled with curiosity. "Who is this?" The ship slowed as it approached, and then a voice came over the communication channels. "People of Earth, we have observed your resistance against the Vorsari. We wish to speak with you. We may be able to help each other." The voice was soft, melodic, almost otherworldly in its calmness. Earth's leaders were stunned. Who could this be? Was it another alien race, or was it someone from one of the Vorsari's conquered worlds? The mystery ship's message echoed in the command center, leaving Earth's leaders momentarily speechless. Who were these newcomers? And what did they mean by help? Lisa Dawson quickly ordered the communication channel to remain open. "This is Earth," she said, her voice firm but filled with the same cautious curiosity that gripped the room. "Who are you, and what do you mean by help?" The response came quickly, a calm, composed voice that seemed both alien and reassuring. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Nexi, a species once conquered by the Vorsari Dominion. Your resistance against them has caught the attention of many in our empire, an empire built on conquest and fear. You have done the impossible, and now we offer you a chance to stand together against them." There was a pause, and then Krell continued, his voice more urgent now. "Many worlds under the Vorsari's rule have seen your courage, your resilience. Some of us are ready to rise. The war you face now is not just yours. It is the fight for freedom across the galaxy. We have watched you, and we believe it is time for all of us to unite." Ambassador Krell's words hung heavy in the air. Earth had just been on the brink of a battle against overwhelming force. Now, an ally from the depths of the Vorsari's conquered territories was offering a path forward, a chance to unite with others who had suffered under the same tyrannical regime. President Garcia turned to Admiral Bennett, who stood quietly, his eyes fixed on the incoming transmission. "What's the catch?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension that filled the room. "We do not ask for anything in return," Krell responded immediately. "Only that you listen. Together, we can disrupt the Vorsari. Their pride and arrogance have blinded them. They cannot comprehend what you have accomplished. They believe you fear war, but they do not understand your true nature. It is time to show them." Earth's leaders exchanged glances, the weight of the decision settling over them. The Vorsari had already proven themselves ruthless, willing to wipe out entire colonies to test humanity. But could they truly unite with a species that had once been their conquerors? "President Garcia," Admiral Bennett said, breaking the silence, "we fought alone up until now, but maybe it's time to change that." Garcia nodded slowly. "We don't have much time. They'll be here soon. Let's do this." With that, Earth's leaders gave the go-ahead. Krell's ship would dock with Earth, and representatives from the other liberated worlds would meet with Earth's military and political leaders. In the days that followed, the atmosphere shifted. There was a renewed sense of hope, something that had been sorely missing in the face of the seemingly unbeatable Vorsari. As the preparations for battle intensified, so did the Alliance. Ships from planets freed by the Vorsari, from distant stars, and alien species who had long suffered under the Dominion arrived one by one. They brought with them knowledge, technology, and strategies, things that the Vorsari had long kept from Earth. Meanwhile, Earth's defense systems were being fortified with the help of this new coalition. The advanced shield technology Dr. Wright had worked on, perfected by Dr. Foster, was shared with their new allies, who added their own enhancements. The allies had weapons of their own, strange and powerful, designed to counter the Vorsari's devastating energy weapons. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as ships gathered and alliances formed. The massive fleet that had once threatened Earth was now countered by a coalition of species united in a common cause. The Vorsari, in their overconfidence, had no idea what was coming. On the day of the final battle, Earth's fleet, bolstered by ships from the liberated worlds, moved into position. The Vorsari flagship led the assault, its massive form looming ahead, ready to unleash its destructive power. As it approached, Admiral Bennett's voice rang through the comms. "All ships, form up! Remember, we fight not just for Earth, but for every world the Vorsari have enslaved. Today, we make history. We will show them that humanity does not fear war. We will fight for our freedom and for the freedom of all who have suffered under their rule." Captain Miller, aboard the Horizon, gave the signal, for Earth and for the galaxy. The battle began. The Vorsari fleet, massive and overwhelming, unleashed a barrage of firepower as they descended toward Earth. But the united forces of Earth and its allies were ready. The first wave of attacks began with a series of coordinated strikes designed to overwhelm the Vorsari's defenses. The Earth ships, using the new shield technology, held their ground, drawing the Vorsari into a trap. As the battle raged across space, Earth's forces fought with everything they had, attacking with a precision and unity that the Vorsari had never anticipated. The Vorsari flagship, the most powerful of the alien ships, fired its superweapon at Earth, a massive beam of energy that could have destroyed a city in an instant. But the shields held. The collective power of the shields from Earth and its allies absorbed the energy, deflecting it back into space. With the Vorsari's flagship vulnerable, Captain Miller and his crew took their chance. They moved in, launching a final assault. With the help of their allies' advanced weaponry, they broke through the flagship's defenses, destroying its core and crippling the ship. The rest of the Vorsari fleet was thrown into disarray as Earth's forces struck decisively, breaking their lines and pushing them back. As the battle raged on, a message was sent from Earth's command center. The Vorsari fleet was retreating. For the first time, the invincible empire was in full retreat. When the dust settled, Earth had won, against all odds. The Vorsari had been forced to flee, their fleet scattered, their empire fractured. It wasn't just a victory for Earth. It was a victory for every world that had ever been conquered by the Vorsari, and it was only the beginning of a new era, a time when the galaxy would no longer live in fear of the Dominion. Back on Earth, Admiral Bennett stood on the bridge of the command center, watching as the last of the retreating ships disappeared from the radar. The room erupted into cheers, but Bennett remained calm, his eyes fixed on the screen. "We've won today, but the fight isn't over," he said, his voice steady. "We'll rebuild, and we'll continue to fight for those who can't. This is just the start of a new chapter for the galaxy." And as Earth's people looked to the future, they knew one thing for certain. Humanity had faced the greatest challenge of all, and they had emerged victorious, not through the love of war, but through the dread of it and the unyielding will to defend the peace they had worked so hard to build. The galaxy was forever changed, and humanity's place among the stars had been secured.